Today we're exploring a squishy fabric with a multi-dimensional vertical rib I've called the bark stitch. The reversible fabric lies wonderfully flat and is much easier to knit than it looks by combining just 3 fundamental compound stitches. First, we'll work the setup rows. Then we'll explore the stitch pattern and learn about long pull-up rows. And at the end, we'll look at the details of this scarf I knit, and specifically the color change, to really see how the stitch pattern is put together. As we go, I'll tell the story of how this stitch came to be, and a fun way to remember how to knit it. So let's knit. The bark stitch is a 6-stitch 6-row repeat, with the diagonal 3x3 blocks worked the same, making it easier to remember. In addition, one set of diagonal 3x3 blocks is worked knit 3, purl 3, knit 3, so it's even easier. I was mulling over a reversible stitch pattern with long loops pulled up from the stitches below, like a star stitch. And you can see the other set of diagonal 3x3 blocks with these long stitches. I've cast on 3 repeats of 6 plus 4 selvage stitches, so 22 stitches. The original selvage I used was my favorite slip-one purlwise with yarn in front at the beginning and knit the ending, but I didn't like how this looked next to the stitch pattern, so I added an extra stitch in between to help balance out the physics. In order to ease into the stitch smoothly, I suggest 6 setup rows. The first 3 are worked slip-one purlwise and purl 1 for the selvage, and then repeat knit 1, purl 1. This is a 1x1 rib. Knit the knit-looking stitches and purl the purls, and knit 2 for the ending selvage. It matches the stitch repeat if you think of it as knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. The next 3 setup rows are worked setup row 4, slip 1 and purl 1 for the selvage, and then repeat knit 3, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and knit the 2 last stitches. Setup row 5 is worked slip 1, purl 1, and then repeat knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and purl 3, and knit the last 2 stitches. Setup row 6 is worked the same as row 4. Slip 1, purl 1, and then repeat knit 3, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and knit the last 2 stitches. The stacked knit 3, purl 3, knit 3 create the first of the simple 3x3 blocks. The ribbing of the setup rows also makes sure the edge doesn't flare. I've marked this side. Now we can start the stitch pattern and the fun. After the selvage, we'll start the diagonal 3x3 block with the knit 3 on this side of the fabric this time. And let's start the party. For the simple block of purl-looking stitches, purl the first stitch. Now we need some party guests. Count 3 purl bumps down in the column that you just worked and pull a long loop up. Make sure to let the yarn slide to make sure it's not too tight. Do the same in the next column of purl-looking stitches, 3 purl bumps down. For the third column, count just 2 bumps down. This matches the first column since we purled 1 stitch already. We have 2 purl-looking stitches still unworked, so now what? It's much simpler than it seems. The middle purl stitch has been overwhelmed by the sudden arrival of the 3 long pulled-up loops, so we'll give it a hug by keeping the yarn in the back, and give it a rest and slip it, and we'll purl the third one. Let's do that again. Knit the first 3 stitches to start the simple 3x3 block. For the next 3 purl-looking stitches, purl the first one. Pull up a loop 3 purl bumps down from what you just worked. 3 purl bumps down the next column, and 2 purl bumps down the third column. I've marked them in dark blue on the chart. I tried just 1 long stitch in the middle first, but it was a bit light, so I increased it to 3 loops. It also makes the knit side of the fabric look even better. At the end of the row, knit the 2 selvage stitches. For the second row, after the selvage, the party is in full swing. Knit the 2 knit-looking stitches, then slip the 3 long loops, purlwise, with yarn in front so they can continue their fun uninterrupted. And knit the regular-looking knit stitch. The next 3 stitches are purled to continue the simple 3x3 block. The third row is the time to wrap up the party. After the selvage, knit 3 to finish the simple 3x3 block. The party moves to you in the next row. Purl the first stitch. Now we're going to combine the next 4 loops on the needle. Slip 2 together knitwise this time, and slip 1 knitwise and a second knitwise. Now put them back on the left needle and knit 4 together through the back loop, and purl the last of the block. The party is over. Well, it's on its way to the next block on the other side. Let's do that again. Knit 3 for the simple block, purl the first stitch of the block. Now we want the middle long loop to end up on the top, so we need to stack up the stitches in order. Slip 2 together knitwise, so the middle is on the top, and then stack the third long loop and the regular purl stitch. Slip them back so you can work all of them together through the back loop, so the middle long loop stays on top. And purl 1. Isn't that lovely? If you've ever worked a center double decrease, it's the same idea. We want to end up with the middle stitch on top. In this case, we have exhausted the middle purl stitch that closes down the party. And make sure to knit the 2 selvage stitches. But not to worry, the next simple 3x3 block is ready. Row 4 is worked like row 1. Slip 1, purl 1 for the selvage, and repeat knit 3 to start the simple block. Purl 1, pull up 3 loops, slip 1 with yarn and back, and purl 1. The party has started on the other side of the fabric than before. Row 5 is worked like row 2. Slip 1, purl 1 for the selvage, then repeat knit 2, slip 3 with yarn in front, and knit 1, and purl 3, and knit the last 2 stitches. This is the easiest row I find. It's mostly knitting and purling. Row 6 is worked like row 3. Slip 1, purl 1 for the selvage, and then repeat knit 3, purl 1, slip 2 together knitwise, slip 2 individually knitwise, slip 4 loops back, and knit 4 together through the back loop, and purl 1. You can see how the extra selvage stitches keep the stitch pattern and the slipped selvage from collapsing into each other. For the other end of the scarf I'll show you next, I've mirrored the setup rows with the ending rows, starting on a row 1 or row 4 if you're really picky. To avoid having a patch of purl looking stitches, I'll continue the 3 compound stitches on the existing simple block and avoid creating a new one by working a knit 1, purl 1, knit 1 block instead. Then I'll work 3 rows of repeat knit 1, purl 1 like the first 3 setup rows and cast off. I found this yarn called Natural Alpaca at Mary Maxim at their store in Ontario, Canada. I like the flex in the yarn, and I like the contrast of the 2 colors. And it's spun loosely and has a nice loft, so it's perfect for this stitch. I cast on 6 multiples of 6 plus the 4 selvage stitches, so 40 stitches. I changed colors on row 2 of the pattern. Let me know in the comments if you experiment with changing on other rows. I worked a multiple of 6 rows before changing the color back. Even though it's worked as a 3-row repeat, the diagonal blocks preserve the look of the 6-row repeat. You can see that clearly here. I worked just 6 rows in the teal. You can also see the diagonal nature of the blocks, with the purl side of the simple blocks under the pulled up loops and the knit side forming an interesting hole. The hole and the loops look a bit like tree bark, especially oak tree bark. When I showed it to he convinced me that the knit-looking blocks look like little dogs, so I thought the bark stitch is a perfect name. For the next stitch, I'm exploring how knit and purl stitches create fantastic natural contours in the fabric because of their structure. My son thought that it looks like folds or scales, so I've called it the dragon scale stitch. Also coming in the fall is a 5-video series like last year. This time it's the ABCs in acrylic. So pick up your knitting and create something awesome. I'll do my best to respond to comments, and I'd love to hear about your favorite reversible knitting pattern. Also feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more awesome reversible knitting. For those of you still here, the last few years I've been working hard to find simple ways to feel better, what I call my daily well-being practices. This is not medical advice, I'm just sharing what works for me. I've learned a new word, neuroaesthetics. Wikipedia defines it as the study of the aesthetic experience of art, or how we feel when we see or make something aesthetically pleasing. Today's well-being practice is to appreciate reversible knitting, especially looking at and creating something beautiful, and even more if it's nature-related. So as I'm knitting, I'm making sure to appreciate the feel of the yarn, the details of the stitch, sometimes the sound of the needles, and of course the beauty of the fabric. Watching the 2-color bark stitch scarf progress is an excellent example. It makes me happy. Have an awesome day.